Now once the patient has been advised admission from the patient's dashboard and the visit has been concluded, the list of the patient who have been advised admission will start to appear in the indoor patient department. Now let us see the working of the indoor patient department. First of all, type in the URL and log in through the IPD user. On successful login, the following screen will appear, and now click on IPD on the navigation menu. What you see now in front of you is the IPD dashboard. IPD dashboard has two primary functionalities inbuilt, which is patients for admission. Now these are all those patients who have been advised admission but have not been accepted or admitted by the nurse in the system. And then the next tab is admitted patient index. All these patients are those patients who have been allotted a bed and have been accepted as the indoor patient in the system. So now it's the nurse's work. If the patient has physically come to the indoor patient department, the nurse must accept this patient. On successful accepting of this patient will become an indoor patient, and all the workflow of this patient will then be as per the indoor patient. Without accepting, the patient will not be allotted a bed, meaning that the nurse will not be able to admit this patient. This admit button is disabled till the time the patient is accepted. Now there is a reason why this functionality has been built like this, because as per the workflow of the hospitals there, the patient, irrespective of any category, must pay a IPD initial deposit at the billing. And it is only after that IPD initial deposit is the patient allotted a bed. So therefore, the nurse here accepts this patient on clicking on the button called accept. If the patient doesn't turn over to the indoor patient department, the patient can be removed by clicking on remove, or if there is no vacant bed, so then this patient can be removed from the system by clicking on no bed as well. So let us accept this patient by clicking on accept. The system prompts the user to be sure to accept this patient. Click on OK. So this patient has now been accepted. Until now, the patient cannot be admitted because the patient has not paid the IPD initial deposit at the time of billing. So let us now log in through the billing administrator and see how this patient is differentiated as an indoor patient at billing. Click on billing on the navigation menu after logging in through the billing admin username and password, and then click on indoor patient billing queue. Now here what you see is that this patient's name start to appear in this list, meaning that this patient has been accepted by the nurse. What he or she needs to do is to submit the IPD initial deposit to be able to allot this patient a bed in the indoor patient department, which is done by clicking on add bill. Then click on indoor patient charges. Under this there is an option of IPD initial deposit. Click on that. A total of 100 shillings is the amount the patient must pay for him to allot a bed in the indoor patient department. After this has been done, the details of the bill can be seen by clicking on the plus sign, and then the bill must be saved by clicking on save bill. Okay. Now the contents of the bill at any time during the admission can be seen here by clicking on View Bill. Now the workflow of a patient who is outdoor and indoor is different, because outdoor patient, as and when the procedure or investigation is performed, pays at the time of billing. But now once the patient has been accepted and has been allotted a bed in the indoor patient department, he or she will not pay every time for the investigations and tests that are performed on that patient. Instead, the patient will clear the bill once in the end at the time of discharge, once the request for discharge comes from the indoor patient department. So after this IPD initial deposit, let us move back to the IPD and see how this patient is then admitted. Click on IPD, and now this button of admit is activated. So then appears a IPD admission slip wherein a treating doctor's name must be selected, the admission ward must be selected. By default, it will be the ward which the doctor has advised the patient at the time of patient's dashboard. Then a bed number must be selected. The bed number must be selected from this chart, where the green color depicts that the bed is empty, and if the color is red, it depicts that the bed is already been allotted to some other patient. Now there is a notation saying 1/0, which says bed number 1 has 0 patients right now, because as a practice, if there is some kind of an epidemic or some cases which has many patients and then there are no beds, maybe there might be a case that there are 2 patients on the same bed. So it's not a regular scenario, but this notation explains the bed number followed by the number of patients on that particular bed. So click on the bed number. It starts to appear in this box. Comments, if any. The chief, sub-chief, religion must be filled in here. All the other information is pulled in by the system itself. Now what is mandatory here is to put in the admitted ward, the treating doctor and the bed number. So then click on submit. A printout of this admission slip can also be taken and can be filed up. Now the patient moves to the admitted patient index. As I also said before, this is a list of the patients who have been allotted a bed. Now there are few things which are done to this patient once he has been allotted the bed. The first tab here you see is for the vital statistics. Click on vital statistics and the following page will appear. With the date and time, the nurse can enter the vital statistics from time to time. Say I enter the blood pressure, the pulse rate, temperature, the diet that the patient is advised, and if there are any notes to be given to the patient, then they can be filled in this box, and then click on submit. These details are successfully stored in the system. The next time the nurse fills in the vital statistics, the old details will appear on the screen as appear here, and the next details will be stored in the next column. So till the patient is admitted, all the details will be captured in the system longitudinally like this. The patient can also be internally transferred from one ward to another. Say from male surgical ward, now the patient is moved to orthopedic ward or any other ward. The patient can be internally transferred by clicking on transfer. Once you select the ward, the bed chart of that ward will begin to appear here. So click on the bed number, select the doctor's name and click on submit. So then the patient can be internally transferred in the system. Now let us see the working of an indoor patient. First of all, log in through a doctor's ID and admit a patient. Let us take the old case and try to admit this patient into the indoor patient department. On successful login, the following screen will appear. Click on OPD on the navigation menu. Select the location and search old patient in the system. A list of similar patients will begin to appear here. Now I will admit this patient called Thomas Odombi and whose relative's name is Emma Watson. The patient is admitted from the patient's dashboard. Now to go to the patient's dashboard, click on the patient identifier or name. What you see in front of you is the patient's dashboard, as was also explained to you before. It is from the patient's dashboard that the patient will be advised admission. Put in a provisional diagnosis and a visit outcome as admit. Once this radio button is clicked, a list of all the IPDs in the hospital will begin to populate. Now the doctor will refer a patient to a particular indoor patient department. Say this patient will, let us refer this patient to the male surgical ward. And then you conclude the visit. Also the other fields can be filled in here. The doctor can also order for procedures, investigation, drugs as before. But the most important part to admit this patient is to click on the admit radio button and then refer a patient to a particular indoor patient department. Now by doing so, the patient is not yet admitted in the hospital, because there might be a case on advising admission the patient might not turn up into the indoor patient department. So it is mandatory for the nurse to accept that patient in her department to be able to categorize that patient as an indoor patient. So then from here the visit must be concluded. Now if the doctor has to order any investigations or procedures for this patient, the doctor must go to the patient's dashboard by typing in his username and password. On successful login, the following screen will appear. On this, click on OPD on the navigation menu. Select the location and click on Search Patient in System. Type in the name or identifier of the patient. All the patients with similar name will begin to appear. Click on the patient's name or identifier. We open the dashboard of the admitted patient. It is highlighted on the top that the patient is an admitted patient. Now, select a provisional diagnosis for this patient. If any procedure has to be scheduled, then the same can be done by choosing a procedure from this list or by typing in the name and then clicking on schedule. This was also explained at the time of outpatient department. Similarly, the doctor can order for various investigations from this dashboard. Now the difference between an indoor patient and outdoor patient is that the patient who is an outdoor must pay first for the queue to populate in the respective departments. But if the patient is an indoor patient, these two tests will directly move to the lab for performing these tests, and correspondingly a bill will be stored in the billing which will be cleared by the patient at the end of the stay. Drugs can also be ordered from this dashboard, and finally an outcome reviewed has to be mentioned by the doctor. And then click on conclude visit to conclude this particular IPD encounter. Now let us see how this bill is saved in the billing department, which can be done by logging in through the billing administrator username and password. On the navigation menu, click on billing and go to the indoor patient billing queue. The name of the patients appear here, and when you click on view bill option, you see the bill that is being saved for an indoor patient. The patient is already paid for the IPD initial deposit, and as soon as he or she is allotted a bed in the indoor patient department, two kind of services populate in this bill itself, which is the catering fee and the admission fee. That is also mandatory for the patient to pay. And then is added all the orders, the list of investigations and procedures that the patient has been ordered by the patient from the dashboard. Now let us see, once this patient has to be discharged from the indoor patient department, what happens. Log in through the IPD user and click on IPD on the navigation menu. Go to the admitted patient index, and if this patient has to be discharged from the indoor patient department, the first step is to send a request to the billing to clear all the bills, and subsequently the patient can be discharged from the indoor patient department. So first of all, click on request for discharge. The request has been sent. Now the patient will again move to billing to clear his dues. To see this, log in through the billing administrator and go to indoor patient billing queue once again and click on view bill. Now when you see this bill, there is an option of submit which has started to populate, which was not there before. The fact that that option to enter the waiver amount and submit has begun to populate means that the request has been sent from the indoor patient department for the billing clerk to clear his dues. A waiver amount can be entered if there is any, and then click on submit to process this bill. The same bill can be printed out also and be handed over to the patient as a cash receipt. This can be done by clicking on print. Now without doing this, the nurse or the doctor will not be able to discharge this patient from the indoor patient department, and the button to discharge the patient will be inactivated till the time the patient pays his bill. Now once the patient has paid for his dues, the button of discharge will be activated. Please click on discharge. The following screen will appear. It is mandatory to put in a diagnosis, the final diagnosis, and the outcome of the patient. Enter a diagnosis and any other instructions that the patient must follow. And then click on Submit. On clicking on Submit, the patient will be successfully discharged from the indoor patient department module. So this is all about the workflow of an indoor patient and the corresponding billing.